Good morning! I'm Amy and this is A-Star Reads, and today we are doing a vlog. Are you ready for it, Nathaniel?
No.
Come on, wake up!
No.
Okay, so the game plan is...
No.
It's gonna be a fun day because we're actually gonna go on a book crawl. I thought, what should I do while I'm in California? Should I visit a family? Should I visit friends? No. We should go check out books. So we're gonna go around the San Francisco Bay. We're starting in South Bay, which is San Jose area. And the first place we're actually gonna go to is in Fremont, where I actually lived in Fremont for quite a while. And so it'll be fun to go check out all these different bookstores. Let's see, Fremont, all the way out through Hayward, up through Oakland area into San Francisco, and then down the peninsula into like, I think San Mateo, and then we'll finally end up in Campbell, which is where we went to high school, which is perfect because we're going to our high school reunion tonight. I couldn't just make it a normal book buying trip, right? Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't.
She had to be weird.
I had to get weird. So what I decided to do, because I got this amazing coin recently from a book box. On one side it has smooth sailing, and on the other side it says rough seas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the coin when we go to each bookstore. And if it's smooth sailing, then I get to buy any book that I want to buy. But if it's rough seas, then we're gonna have a fun little random number generator game thing. So what I'll do is I will randomly generate a genre or see what kind of genres the bookstore has, and then randomly generate one, and then I have to stick to that section, and then I'll see how many shelves they have and randomly generate a number. And so basically randomly generate numbers until I get to a book that I have to buy. So the goal of the vlog is not only to buy a book at each store, I think we're gonna be hitting six or seven, but also to then read each of those books, including the books that are mystery books that I have no clue what I'll end up with. Hey, it's Editing Amy here. So one thing I didn't mention was that after each book stop, when I pick a book, I'm gonna put in a clip of me reviewing that book so that you'll get to see right away how I felt about that book. That's the goal!
So this book will come out sometime next summer.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a video that's gonna happen right away. You're helpful, thank you, Chelle. Okay, so first place we're going to is Half Price Books in Fremont because I am a big Half Price Books fan. I know this isn't a bookstore that's exciting to people who have them around them. I don't have one in Washington where we live. I miss Half Price Books, so that's where we're going to start out our journey because they have one here in Fremont. So we should do our... You want to do the honors?
For what? Oh, now?
Yeah.
I can't flip a coin.
I can do the noise.
What do you want me to do?
I'm trying to position it better. There. You keep resisting me. I'm trying to position it better and you're like, no. Okay, ready? 1, 2. What's it say?
It says smooth sailing.
Smooth sailing! So that means at the first one, I get to pick a book. And your arm is slowly going down. Chelle's not a very good videographer.
It's starting to be heavy.
So I ended up going with the third book in the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy because I have the first two. After I finish reading the second one, I'm definitely going to want to read the third one right away. And then I actually did get a second book because I found the Bantam version of the Royal Assassin, which this is a really pretty cover. So I don't think I have this one yet. So I got that one for $4. First place was a success. So I'm really excited to talk about Rich People Problems by Kevin Kwan. When I first filmed this video, I had only read Crazy Rich Asians. I have since read China Rich Girlfriend, the second book in the series. I gave that one 5 stars. I think that one has such a bang of a beginning. It was so good. And then with this book, it took me a while to get to it. Not because I wasn't excited for it, just because life. Life. And I'm not the best at continuing series. So I have since read this one. This is definitely one of my all-time favorite series. I just love it for many reasons. And this one, I didn't quite give it 5 stars. I gave it 4.5 stars. Now, the main reason for that, because I think it is a really good finale to the series. It did take me a while to get into it. I wasn't like bored. It was never bored. It was just, it didn't have the same punch as the first 2 books did. And this one does have quite a few sections that are punches, that are 5 stars, but overall I felt like this was more of a 4.5 for me. And it's still fantastic. It's still one of my favorite series. I still absolutely love this book. I just don't think it was quite as strong as the first 2 books for me. Now, one of the reasons why I love Kevin Kwan's writing in this series especially so much is because it reminds me a lot of Jane Austen. And the reason it does, the reason I see parallels is because they're both social commentaries, especially when it comes to wealth and what is acceptable within society. And what I think is very interesting about both of these authors is that Jane Austen was within the higher level of society that she was critiquing at the time. And Kevin Kwan has the same situation. He came from a very wealthy family. He went to the same schools as some of our incredibly wealthy people within this story. I like that I see Jane Austen as this critic of society during the 1800s, whereas Kevin Kwan is a critic during the 2000s. In like the same capacity. I just love the characters and I hate the characters. There's some characters in here that you just, especially this one, there's one particular character that you don't like throughout the whole series, but you just want to strangle this guy. He's just so awful. He's so awful. And that's the fun thing about these books, is they make you feel that strongly about these characters. But then because you've had the first 2 books to get to know all these characters so well, you have very strong feelings about them in this one. One thing I really did like is that it did bring us back into some of the people that were in the first and second books that I couldn't quite remember. And it reminded us of how they played a role, because it's been a long time since I read the first 2 books. And so there were definitely people where I was like, wait, who are they? What did they do? And at some point in this book, it reminded me, and that helped. And there was one point towards the end where they actually kind of incorporated a family tree into this book through the writing, and it wasn't boring. I just felt like they did it really cleverly in a way to remind us how everyone is related, which really comes into play in this story, and it comes into play within the whole series. The beginning, the first part of the story starts out with Rachel Chu and Nicholas Young, and they're this young couple that are completely in love, and she is going with him to visit his family in Singapore, but he has never told her that he has a crazy rich Asian family. And I mean the highest level of society, not just like, oh, they're a bit wealthy, because she has friends. Rachel has friends that are wealthy. No, these are the most elite, highest people within society, and it's really shocking for her, and it's really difficult because they're very judgmental, and there's a lot of really mean characters in this, especially within the first, well, actually in all the series. There's just bad people. There's some really bad people. And they do some really bad things. That's kind of how it starts out. The story obviously goes a lot further, and it's not just about Nicholas and Rachel. It's centered around them quite a bit, but you get so many side characters in the story. There's so many family members that you get to know. You get to hear their stories. And I do want to reiterate that I know the movie is fantastic, I agree, but it's more focused on the romance of the story, whereas these are a lot more literary fiction in my opinion. I don't think that these quite focus on the romance. And so when people go into this series, I don't think they're really getting what they think they're getting. Like, I don't know that this was marketed through the movie in the way the actual books read. Just be aware of that when you go into it, because if you can go into it thinking of it more of like a Jane Austen book, where it is all about that social commentary, there's this underlying making fun of everything. There's a lot of humor in Jane Austen's books, which a lot of people don't get. There's a lot of humor, and in fact more humor in these books than even Jane Austen. And if you can go into it thinking about it that, and looking at this portion of society that you're like, oh wow, it's ridiculous in a lot of ways, then I think that you'll enjoy this series even more, and probably as much as I did, because I just think it was fun, clever. It hit all the things I enjoy when it comes to these types of books, and I don't know, it's so good. I just really love it. And so I'm very excited that I got to read Rich People Problems. I'm sad that I'm finished with the series, but I do plan on rereading it at some point, hopefully not too far in the future, because I enjoy it so much. And I can't wait to go back and remember what happened in the first 2 books, because it has been a while. So the next place we're actually gonna go to is called Books on Bee in Hayward, and I've never been to this one before, so I'm excited to check it out. Haven't been to Hayward in a long time either, so we'll see what's changed. Nathaniel is going to determine my bookish fate today. What do we got? What do we got? Oh no! Thanks. I don't know if you're gonna be flipping any more coins for me. So it looks like once we get to Books on Bee, I'm gonna be randomly generating to see what my next book is. So in this bookstore, we thought it would actually be a lot easier just to go by bookshelves, since it was a pretty small bookshop, and there were 14 bookshelves in total, so I did a random number generator out of 14. Okay, so number 4 is writing guides. I don't think I'm gonna count those, but poetry, I will count those, and dramas. All right, so shelf number 4 was at the front of the store, and it ended up being full of mostly plays and dramas and a lot of poetry. And then at the bottom it had writing guides, and I wasn't gonna force myself to read writing guides, so I ended up only using 6 of the shelves in my random number generator. So I did 1 through 6, and I ended up on shelf 3. So this was a poetry shelf, and I was very excited about that because I don't read poetry very often. And I had Chelle count out all the books on the poetry shelf, and there were 64. So then I did another random number generator, 1 through 64, and I ended up with book number 37.
4, 35, 36, 37. Into a Towering Passion.
Poems on Love. So I just had the coolest bookish experience. Books on Bee was amazing. The lady who owns it / runs it is so much fun and has so much energy, and we talked books quite a bit. And then Chelle made the mistake of showing me this gorgeous necklace. It's a necklace that has persuasion, these little bookish necklaces. Let me see if I can find it. So here is the beautiful little book. You pierced my soul. I am half agony, half hope. I have loved none but you. Oh, and that is the most cutest thing. I couldn't resist it. I probably should have, but I couldn't. So thank you, Chelle. It's your fault that I spent more money. And then the book I ended up getting was Into a Towering Passion. This was my random choice, but it's a book about poems on love, and I think this will be fun to read, and it'll bring some pleasant moments into my life, so that's really nice. Okay, so the experience of shopping at Books on Bee was really wonderful, and that was probably one of the places where I had the most personable experience with the bookstore owner, because she was just charming, and she really was excited to share her love of books with me and talk about the community and how Books on Bee has been supported so strongly by the community, and I loved it. And so of course when I did my random generating, I ended up with a book that I was not expecting, and I wasn't quite sure what to make of this this book on poems. But you know, it was a nice little short book, and I figured that's not too painful, right? And I didn't know like who authored these poems. It just says Everyman's poems, and it's edited by A.D.P. Briggs. So when I first started reading the introduction from the editor, it was kind of explaining how they decided to put this book of poetry together. And their focus was really on passion and desire, but then it didn't necessarily just take passion in the form of pleasant, lovely poetry. It was also looking at passion from different perspectives, like the loss of love and the loss of people, like death and stuff. So there were a lot of poems in this that were actually pretty dark and hard to read. You know, they weren't all nice and sweet, and there were some pretty morbid ones at times. But then there were, of course, what you would expect, some very sweet romantic poems, or some very salacious and dirty poems. Yeah, our buddy William Shakespeare. We are not fooled by your innuendos, okay? We get what you're trying to put in there. It was so funny because there were quite a few poems where if you didn't capture the innuendo, it would seem like a very sweet and wholesome poem, but no, there were some pretty there were some pretty dirty writers here. which I thought was hilarious. Mom's not as comfortable with poetry, and so I thought it would be fun for us to be able to evaluate these poems and kind of see what we are understanding about them, because poetry is not necessarily my favorite form of literature, and so I was like, well, let's see what we think about these. William Shakespeare, Thackeray, Keats, Dickinson, like all these writers that many people have heard of. But then there were quite a few in here that I hadn't heard of before, and I don't know that they were obscure, because I don't think there were any obscure writers in here, but they were different writers throughout a really broad span of history. I don't know when the most recent one was. I think it was maybe in the 1900s, but most of them were poems from periods prior to the 19th century. And so there were a lot of like really old poems written in the Old English, and some of those were really hard to translate because I didn't understand what they were saying. Ultimately, I think I would give this book 4 stars. And the reason I'm giving it 4 stars, because when it comes to any kind of collection of poetry or short stories, there's always gonna be ones that you're not as crazy about. I had such a fun time reading this. For the most part, it was fun interpreting all these poems. And also there were like 100 of them. So there were so many that I would say it averaged out to be a 4 star. There were a lot that I really liked, and so clever, so funny, so interesting, and the writing style was gorgeous. And there were some I was not as crazy about, but nothing that I was so appalled by or so disgusted by that I would say that any of the poems were a 1 or 2 star. And maybe that is because these were pulled from well-known writers, and they were poems that were well known, mostly, not all. There were some that I tried to look up to look for interpretations, and I couldn't. I could find interpretations of the author's other works, but not necessarily the poem that was used in this book. I found a lot of enjoyment going through these different poems and discussing them. And of course, it helped that I was talking about them with my mom, because she has a much more literal perspective on poetry. And I'm like, no, let's look at the hidden meanings here. And so it was fun for us to debate and talk about these different poems and get a better understanding of poetry. Was it the most romantic, like I want to share these poems with a lover at some point? No, not necessarily. I could easily see reading these poems again, so I will keep this book, because you will find different things. You will have different interpretations of these poems at different points. And there may be some that just hit the right way at certain times, especially the ones that are about death and dying or about losing a loved one. Those are really hard to read, but there is something to be said for seeing someone else go through similar emotions and feelings and being able to capture those feelings and emotions in a way that you can understand. And so this was a good pick, even though it was this weird random choice that I was not expecting to end up with. So because of the way today has gone, Chelle had a bit of a rough morning because her car got broken into, so that was pretty tough. We are gonna skip San Francisco because at this point with traffic, it's looking like the next stop is going to be about 50 some odd minutes away, and we're kind of short on time today, so we just want to make sure we hit our spots. So we're going to hit 5 bookstores in total, which actually is better for me because it's 5 books easier. And so now we're going to go across to San Mateo, which is over the bay. We'll take the bridge across, and we're going to hit
B Books.
I think it's B Street Books. B Street Books?
I don't see it anymore.
Yeah, I think it's the B Street Books.
Yes.
So we need Nathaniel to do a flip for us. What's it say?
Rough seas.
No, Nathaniel!
Wait, now watch as I get a good one.
You're not lucky.
No, that's rough seas again. It's lucky for me, because you get to do more work.
Lucky for you? Want me to do more work?
Yeah.
So there's so many sections. Some of them I don't see myself reading, and some of them I might. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to randomly generate a number and then start counting the sections from the front that I know I would read. What do you think of that idea?
Sounds like a plan.
Because this place is pretty big and nice. It's cool, but a little overwhelming. First number I got was 11, so we'll see what we can do with that. Okay, so we ended up on politics and sociology because there are books on here that I would probably read. I don't think I'm very excited.
7 shelves.
Okay. As Chelle mentioned, there were 7 shelves on that one particular shelf, and we did a random number generator between 1 and 7 and got the 4th shelf. So then after that, Chelle counted all the books on that shelf, and there were 35 books total. So we did another random number generator, 1 through 35, and we got 28.
I'm gonna laugh if you get Rush Limbaugh.
You're not funny.
28?
Uh-huh.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
Stop
just
laughing.
Past it. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 26, 27, 28. The Threat by Andrew McCabe.
Oh no.
How the FBI protects America in the age of terror and Trump.
Okay, interesting, maybe. I don't know how I feel about that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're at Koja Kitchen. We're gonna have a Koja, whatever that is. Chelle got some beer. I'm driving, so I got a soda. Nathaniel got something to drink.
Strawberry mint lemonade.
Strawberry mint lemonade. I had to look up this book, The Threat, by Andrew McCabe, because I don't know quite what I'm getting myself into. I typically don't read too many political books. Sometimes I do, depends on what it is. And I do like sociology books, though, so that section I couldn't discount because I would definitely read some of the books in there. But there were some books in there that I was a little scared about getting. And this one, I don't know what to make of it. So ultimately, it will be interesting to find out. And it's not too long. And we'll call it my educational moment. Okay, so The Threat by Andrew McCabe. The majority of this book was meant to talk about Andrew McCabe's life in the FBI. I think he really wanted to make clear how the FBI works, because I think he recognizes that the citizenry of the United States has a lot of misunderstandings and just lack of knowledge of how the FBI system works. And so he was very methodical, very detailed when he was talking about how we do investigations, how we do this, how we get to the point where we actually create an investigation, because there's like 4 layers, how we approach all of the people who are being considered in an investigation, how we treat our informants, how we make sure that we keep everybody safe. He was very specific, very methodical. You could tell that he's the kind of person who is by the book. These are the rules. This is the procedures. This is how we do everything. I did start reading it at first, which I was enjoying, but then I started listening to the audiobook, and I enjoyed that even more, because typically when I read a memoir, I like hearing from the author themselves. And you can hear in McCabe's voice and the way he talks about things. Most of the time, his voice is pretty, I don't want to say monotone, that's not the right word for it. But like I said, he is a procedural kind of person. He's going to tell you something and be very direct and make sure that he's very clear. So the other part of this book was really how frustrated he was and how frightened he was in his dealings with the Trump administration, how he had never seen a presidential administration undermine this idea of checks and balances within the government. There are reasons why certain agencies have to keep themselves separate from each other, because they aren't supposed to influence each other. There are also reasons why the FBI is supposed to be so apolitical and not be partisan whatsoever. And Trump was trying to change that. Trump was trying to get them to be like, hey, well, you voted for me, right? All of you voted for me. And when they weren't part of his buddy-buddy system and they weren't willing to put everything aside for him, that's when he started firing people. One thing that McCabe is definitely trying to do here is explain how the FBI has gotten to the point where it is today. And he does mention how there have been things in the past, especially before the 1970s, that the FBI has done that were not in good faith necessarily, or not good choices that were made, and how they have tried to come from that and make their system a lot more not heavily influenced by outside forces, I guess, or not easily changed based on individuals' decisions. And so I think that he wanted to point out that there were things that were happening in the past within the FBI, which certain people would not agree as being good things, but because of those experiences, they've learned a lot and they've come a long way. I think that's what he was trying to say. He never said it explicitly, but he did point out that there were problems in the past and they've come a long way to try to make things better. And I think he wanted to make it clear what his role was with the Clinton emails and how that played out, and how that shouldn't have had the effect that it did, but because of everything that was going on in the media, because it was everything that was going on with Trump's administration, how much they were forcefully trying to push things and create fake news, because they put a lot of like fake stories into the news, including about McCabe. And a lot of these things didn't have facts, but because they were interesting, they blew up in the media. And honestly, this whole book was his attempt to say, here, this is what actually happened from my perspective, being a person who's been in the FBI forever, considering how much of a factual, by the book kind of person he is. I can see that it would be very harmful for him mentally and emotionally to feel like he has been misrepresented in the news, in the media, and that this agency that he absolutely loves, he loves the FBI. He feels that they have come a long way, and he feels very strongly in their purpose, that he feels that people need to have a better understanding of what was going on during this time, how this program runs, and how the Trump administration was trying to undermine it all, and really succeeding in a lot of ways by firing Jim Comey, by firing McCabe, by undermining all the investigations that were going on, especially about the one where Russia was influencing the election. So that really was the intention of this book. I found it very informational, informative. I actually wasn't that surprised to hear how the FBI works, all their systems and procedures, because there was a time when I was much younger that I was really interested in working for the FBI. I just had this, I don't know why, but I was very interested in working for the FBI, and I don't know if I'd read something about it, but basically what McCabe was saying is all the things that I had read about or knew about how the FBI works at this point. Ultimately, this book was very readable. I thought it was very interesting, and I really learned a lot from it. I think it's always important to learn about things that maybe don't necessarily make us comfortable, or we don't necessarily know how we feel about it, but we should have a better understanding of what our government is like and how it works. We should definitely have a good understanding of how it works and how systems and agencies like this actually operate. And so I thought that there was a lot of very in-depth detail about that. There was nothing super fancy about the writing. It was very orderly, just kind of like how I think McCabe is based off reading this book. And I enjoyed it. For a nonfiction book like this, I would give it 4 stars. So that's my rating. Okay, so the next place we're heading to is Feldman's Books in Menlo Park. And I used to work in Menlo Park at one point, so I don't think I ever spent much time in the downtown area, but I will say that San Mateo has a really cute downtown area. We don't have time to really wander around too much, but if you're ever in San Mateo, check it out. There's a lot of cool things here. Get a good spin on it. That's not a spin! You have to use your finger to go. Boom.
It's too heavy.
It's not that heavy.
I don't want to do it by the phone.
Oh yeah.
Roxy!
No! Nathaniel! Chelle, this is your fault. You were supposed to do it. Oh my gosh.
I think it's too heavy of a coin. That's the problem.
The first spin that I did, that was rough seas. The second one I did was technically smooth sailing.
What do you mean?
The first time I did it, the first time outside of the car.
Yeah.
The second time I did it, I got the smooth sailing.
Oh, when you did the practice one.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the one that counted.
I'm just saying,
You can hit smooth seas, but you aren't for me. This is not good. I ordered the one that has the Tomiko on it. Tomiko? What are the eggs called?
Row.
Excited about that? And Nathaniel got the kamikaze fries. And then I got, what is this? The koji, the original koji, and this is the umami fries. Can't tell the difference.
Well, Amy want to try it too, so.
What kind did you get?
Braised pork one.
Braised pork. Ooh. What's fun about this is if the bun is made out of rice. Rice buns. Couldn't help ourselves. We had to get some mochi nut donuts.
And Korean hot dogs.
And Korean hot dogs. Okay, so this bookstore was full of books, and we ended up deciding to go by genre. So there were 30 different genres we chose from, and as you'll see, we ended up with 8, which was the fiction genre. We landed in the fiction genre, which is good, but there's a lot of fiction shelves, so Chelle's counting them.
Are we counting? Is this? Yeah, it's fiction.
Fiction
Literature
also?
and fiction. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
14?
14.
Okay. Then Chelle counted out how many shelves there were in the fiction section, and she counted 14, but then once we went around the corner, there were actually 20. So we did 1 through 20, and we got bookshelf number 5. We didn't count the very top shelf because it was like encyclopedias or something along those lines. So we counted the 8 shelves that we saw, and we did 1 through 8, and we got shelf number 4. Got Steinbeck.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17,
A lot of
18,
Steinbeck.
19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24.
On shelf number 4, there were 40 books. So we did another random number generator, 1 through 40, and we got book number 17. Okay, we got 17. What do we got, Chelle?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
Little book.
John Steinbeck.
Sweet Thursday. I haven't read that yet. Yes!
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, so I would call this one a success because Sweet Thursday by John Steinbeck is the second in the Cannery Row, I think it's a duology, and I loved Cannery Row. It's one of my favorite classics. I'm really excited about reading this one, especially after getting that last one. I feel like it was nice to get one that I'm looking forward to. So I have finished Sweet Thursday by John Steinbeck, and this was an interesting read because I ended up reading it twice, and the reason I ended up reading it twice was because the first time I read it, I didn't actually review it. And then a lot of time went by, and I felt like to give it a proper review, I wanted to reread it. So I ended up rereading it, and it was a 4.25 stars. I gave it a 4.25 stars both times. I felt like that rating stuck, and I really enjoyed it. Now, was it the 5-star that Cannery Row was? No, it wasn't. But did that matter to me? Did I still enjoy myself? Yeah, I really did. It's a different story. At this point, they have all returned from World War II, and their lives are different. Things have changed. And our main character, Doc, it's interesting to see this conflict in a person who has been so comfortable with himself for so long. And because he's such an important figure within this community, his things that he's dealing with actually affect the whole community. And of course, then they want to get involved the way they do back in the guys and everybody else. And whenever they get involved, disaster ensues. That's just kind of the way it goes. And so I really loved the nostalgic element of coming back to characters that I love so much. This, as a reread, was very comforting. It was a comfort read. And granted, not every moment of John Steinbeck's stories are happy. In fact, most of them are sad. I tend to enjoy his character development a lot. I know what I'm going to get from it. And I generally think I know how I'm going to feel. So we'll see if that's true, because this year I at least plan on reading Grapes of Wrath, and I am excited about that one, but I know that's a difficult one. I still haven't read East of Eden, and that's supposed to be a very sad book, so we'll see if I change my tune. But at this point, John Steinbeck just continues to be an author that doesn't disappoint me very often. Because he's from the area that I'm from, there's a huge part of me enjoying these stories from a perspective that I understand, not because the time period, because the time period is completely different, but because I just understand the location, and there's something nostalgic about that. One thing I will say about his writing that is very true, continues to be true, and one of the reasons why I love his writing so much, and I love his character development so much, is he takes the common person, not the richest person, not the smartest person, not the most brilliant person, not the most beautiful person. He just takes the common person and he shows the richness of their personalities, of their lives. Sometimes it's not a good thing. Sometimes they're not good people. They're just people who are living their normal lives, and yet he can make their story amazing. Yeah, he does. He just makes their story amazing. And, I'm not saying that all his characters are wonderful, lovable, likable. They're not. There's the beauty in their flaws. There's a lot of beauty in the nuances and mistakes they make, the lessons they have to learn. I connect with that part of his writing, and I think that's why I enjoy it so much. Because I'm not sure it's for everyone. Actually, I know it's not for everyone, and I think some people might find it uninteresting. Some people might find it too depressing. But there's something about his character development and the way he views humanity that I connect with and resonates with me so much that most of what John Steinbeck has written so far that I've read, I've really liked. So I think if you are wanting to try John Steinbeck and you're afraid of trying East of Eden, Grapes of Wrath, these big, big novels that are very sad, I'd say try with something like Cannery Row and then go on to Sweet Thursday. These are nice, short little novels, and they aren't as depressing. They give you a really good example of his character development, and it gives you an experience seeing what Monterey, California was like back before World War II and then after World War II. And he really does add a lot about the location and what's going on in the time to his books, so that you get a clear picture of what life is like there at that time, because he was a person who lived in this area at that time. And he was very familiar with these places and the stories that he writes. And a lot of his characters are actually based off real people, at least in Cannery Row. I would like to point out that this was written in 1954 from a white male perspective, and that there are some use of language and some cultural stereotypes in this that I think would probably make some people uncomfortable. Not as bad as other books that are written at this time, but it's the reality of the writing, that there are going to be some words in here used that we wouldn't use today and we wouldn't feel comfortable reading about. And so please be aware of that going into this. And of course, these are things that you don't necessarily have to consider when reading classics, but I think that sometimes it helps me to unpack these, to understand more about the history of this time, understand where the biases are coming from, who's writing, who they're writing for, and who's not being included in this conversation. So these are things to think about. All right, so it is Sunday. We weren't able to make our last stop yesterday because we were running up short on time, but today we're going to where?
The Campbell Recycle Bookstore.
Yeah, so we're really excited about this. I had thought I had never been there before, but turns out I went there at least once, and it is really cute. You've gone a lot.
I've gone a lot. It's kind of like my bookstore.
So against my better judgment, I'm letting Nathaniel flip the coin this last time.
Yeah, I don't know why you're letting me do
I don't
this.
know why I'm letting you do this either. Okay.
Rougsies!
No!
No choosing books for you.
You didn't flip it well.
I told you should use the last one as a special thing for yourself.
So we decided that because Nathaniel did me so dirty, that I would get to do 2 for this one, because we also didn't hit our 6th bookstore up in San Francisco that we were gonna have time to do. So 1 I get to pick, and 1 this little man.
Well, technically, I flipped it a second time and it was Rougsies again.
No,
so
that doesn't count.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't, because you're a terrible flipper. We're gonna kind of go with sort of the way the aisles are numbered and stuff, and then count the back walls and stuff like that. So there's 16, so I will first see which aisle we're gonna be on. I lied, 18. So we'll do 1 to 18. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we got like manga, young adults, and then some young kids, and over there too. So this whole wall. Okay, we'll see how many sections there are. So once we landed on this back wall, we counted the number of shelves actually on that wall, and there were 9 of them. So after doing a random number generator between 1 and 9, we got 3. Okay, so we ended up with this section right here. This is 3. Let's see what we're gonna get. I got some interesting choices on here. Chelle's hoping I get the R.L. Steins. And so then when we were with the 3rd shelf, we counted how many actual shelves were on that shelf, and there were 7. We did another random generator 1 through 7 and got 5.
Number of copies? That's what I do at the other places.
Oh, all the numbers of copies?
I counted the number of copies.
Okay, then I guess you gotta do it that way.
Okay, ready?
Okay, go ahead.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21.
21, okay. 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay,
You are going to be reading Reflection. A
That's the
Twisted
Mulan.
Tale.
Yeah.
What if Mulan had to travel to the underworld?
These don't need to be read in order because they're all different, I think. They're all separate.
Yeah.
These are the Twisted Tales are all separate stories. So I don't think I need to read it from...
Wow,
Yeah!
Mulan.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay, good.
That's actually pretty cool.
I actually want to read this series, so I'm excited about that. Thank you. Thank you, Nathaniel.
You did good.
Okay, so let's pretend that I didn't just finish doing yoga and that I look like $1 million. So I'm going to tell you about Reflection by Elizabeth Lim. This is a YA fantasy. It's also a reimagining of the movie Mulan. So it's actually based off the movie versus being a retelling of a book. So I have to warn you in advance that the premise of this book actually begins at a point in the movie where it would be pretty spoilery if you haven't seen the movie. So if you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie, then come back and listen to this review. So there's a point in the movie where Mulan saves the day. She defeats the Huns single-handedly, of course. And then Shen Yu is about to attack her. He's the military leader for the Huns. And Shang, her commanding officer, intercepts, and he ends up getting stabbed. In the movie, he survives. In the book, he doesn't. So that's where the story actually begins. In the book, he goes to the underworld, and Mulan feels so guilty for getting Shang killed. She feels like she got him killed. She didn't really get him killed. You know, Shen Yu's the one that killed him. Plus, he's become a really important person in her life, a very important mentor, and he's taught her so much that she wants to do whatever she possibly can to save him. So he hasn't quite died, actually. I say that he's died, but he hasn't quite died. He's almost dying. He's like on death's door. He's knocking. And the night that he is meant to die, she has a vision where his father comes and says, I need your help, Ping, because Mulan at that point is Ping. Nobody knows that Mulan is Mulan. Please go to Diyu, which is the underworld, and save my son. So then Mulan goes on this journey with Shishi, who is Shang's guardian. Then we try to see if hopefully they get out of Diyu and she can actually save Shang so that he doesn't die. Because if he dies, then that's it. It's all over. Of course, along the process, she's also trying to figure out who she is because she's been impersonating a male soldier to try and get her family's respect and to figure out who she is the whole time. So that part of the story where Mulan is trying to understand who she is and what her purpose in life is going to be, that stays the same. It's just that the way it's done is different because in this case, they're going through this adventure through Diyu, the underworld. And it's a really fun reimagining. I really enjoyed the twists. I loved that Elizabeth Lim kept the tone of a Disney movie, except that she focused a lot more on the mythology, actual Chinese mythology, and kind of repaired some of the damage that Mulan has done for some people within the Chinese culture, because as Disney sometimes does, and as much as I love Disney, I understand that Disney does this, there is a level of tamping down the reality of the cultures and the people that are involved, the stories that actually happened, and not providing a very accurate representation of either the culture or the actual story or the mythology in this case. So there were elements of the mythology of this that a lot of people who are Chinese were really upset about or just didn't feel like it well represented Chinese mythology. So Elizabeth Lim actually brought in a lot more Chinese mythological story elements into this, and I think that that was wonderful because it added a lot to the story. It still felt very young. It reads very young, and so as far as my rating goes, I'm not sure. I think as far as enjoyment goes, I'd probably give it a 4 stars, but it does kind of feel a little 3.75 as well, so I would probably vacillate between 3.75 and 4. Not that I didn't enjoy it. It was just so simplistic in the writing style. It was very young for a YA that for me, I wanted a little more, only because I feel like YA has gotten so sophisticated these days, and I feel like you can go even further than was gone. But at the same time, then you wouldn't be able to probably maintain the Disney element to it, how it felt like you're reading a Disney movie, which I did love. So yeah, 4 stars probably, because I enjoyed this a lot, and I would definitely read more of these twisted tales. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was interesting how they changed it up, and I'd like to read more by Elizabeth Lim because I enjoyed this. And then to speak more on the characters and how she portrayed them, if you've watched the Disney movie Mulan, they're portrayed exactly the same way as they are in the movie, which I thought was clever. And then the way she did the action scenes and some of the more fantastical elements to it, I could picture it in my mind as you would picture a Disney film. So she really kept to the tone of, you know how in Disney films sometimes things seem a little fantastical, like they can do more with a cartoon than they could do with a real human being. And that was really maintained in the way, like some of the fight scenes, some of the adventure scenes, it was really maintained well in this book. And so I really appreciated it for that, because I thought it probably takes a lot of creativity to think about how can I make this seem like it's just a different interpretation of this movie, but it is still similar to the movie. And so it was fun. And if you're looking for something a lot of fun and gives you those Disney Mulan vibes, but gives you a bit of a different story and will actually teach you more about the mythology. I mean, it's not extensive. It's still very simplistic, but it gives you a little more information. I do recommend Reflection by Elizabeth Lim. Just be aware that it feels young. It feels particularly young for a YA. And I think that's because we're trying to maintain that Disney feel. Okay, Chelle.
What?
Which one?
Which one what?
Which one? Should I pick one of these?
I don't know. Should you?
I don't know. That's the problem with mystery ones.
I am positive that this is The Maidens.
Yeah, and so I've heard such mixed things. Did you like it?
I gave it 3 stars, right? 3 or 4. I think I gave it 3.
So you must have liked it if you gave it 4 stars, so you would remember that.
I gave it 3.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I want to own it then. Get it from the library. Okay, I think I've decided I'm gonna get the Song of Achilles because everybody loves it. Chelle absolutely loves it, and she didn't get to flip for a coin, so this is her pick. And I have been wanting to read this for a long time. So that's my choice. Definitely a really nice bookstore.
It is. They have D&D dice.
Nathaniel's geeking out over D&D dice. Emphasis on the geek part. Yeah. Okay, so I have actually read Song of Achilles twice now in preparation for this vlog. So the first time I read it physically and absolutely loved it. 5 stars. This is a 5-star book. The second time I read it, I listened to it on an audiobook. Also, 5 stars. The audiobook narration is fantastic. I loved the person who narrated it. I will list their name up here. And I was a little concerned on my reread, would I actually give it a 5 stars? Because one thing I've noticed about this particular book is in the beginning, there's a lot of setup of these characters, building the mythology, building their backstory, and it doesn't necessarily feel like it's going to be a 5-star read when you first start it. And this was true for both times I read it, because even though I knew what happened and I remembered what happened the second time I read it, I was like, I'm rereading the beginning of this and I'm thinking, okay, I like it. It's good. It's giving me the information I need. But how much do I actually really like it? Do I want to give it a 5-star again? And then it did the same thing that it did with the first time I read it. It turned amazing. And all that build up in the beginning, it contributed to how much I loved the characters at the end, how much I loved the story at the end, and how it affected my emotions. It's so good. And it has one of my favorite characters of all time, I would say, in a book, Patroclus. I love Patroclus so much. The second time reading it just solidified how much I love this character. And I think that this is just a character that captures what I love about character development so well. You don't necessarily think he's the most amazing guy at the beginning. You don't necessarily think he's the most amazing character, but what he builds into and what he becomes and the climax of what happens in the story is just so incredible. It's just beautiful. It does make you cry. Well, it made me cry. No, it doesn't make everybody cry, but it definitely made me cry because I was so attached to these characters. It gives you an interesting perspective on Achilles and the relationship that he's created with Patroclus. There is so much in this. I loved Briseis. I loved the depictions of the different characters, but I also loved how there was this nod to classic Greek mythology, but it was written and created in a way that is very digestible from a 21st century perspective. A lot of the times when I'm reading classic Greek mythology, some of the stories are so brief and so unbelievable that it's hard to relate to it or hard to, I don't know, give it the same weight that I felt this story was able to give it. Everything was put in context in a way that made it, I don't want to say more believable because it's still mythology and there's so much of it that is about the gods and events that happen that seem impossible. But it flowed so well in the writing of this, and I thought the writing was gorgeous. Madeline Miller has a beautiful writing style. I cannot wait to read Circe and Galatea. I cannot wait to read her other works now after reading this. And I do believe that if you feel like you're not loving it, absolutely loving it at the very beginning, give it time, because it's one of those books that for a lot of people, maybe not everybody, it's really going to grow and those characters are going to become more and more important. And I don't have enough good things to be able to say about it. It makes me want to read more mythology. It makes me want to understand mythology even more, which is a very positive thing for this book, that it excites me into reading more, especially when I have struggled with mythology in the past. I've struggled with Greek mythology because I want a lot more from it. So if you don't know what Song of Achilles is about, this is the story of Achilles when he goes off to the Trojan War. It talks about his relationship with Patroclus, and this is a retelling that puts Patroclus and Achilles in a relationship and creates this dynamic between them that's more of a romantic relationship than anything else. And you're looking at this whole story, this perspective of this classic mythological tale from Patroclus's perspective. It's a great perspective. It's a perspective that I enjoy because it brings a lot of humanity to it. It takes the focus off of Achilles in the sense that he is the son of a god, but it also puts the focus on Achilles as to what his personality was like, what his role was like within this great war. And I guess also it's a look at what actually makes a hero. What is a hero? And that is a conversation that I loved in this story. And that is a conversation that I thought really brought it into the 21st century. The perspective that we get from Patroclus is very relevant to today and very relevant to what makes a good person. And so, yeah, loved it. So as it turns out, I never actually filmed an outro for this video. It was so fun to do this with Chelle and Nathaniel. They are obviously back home in California, and Nathaniel is now 2 years older than he was at that time. So things have changed, life has changed. It was fun looking back at all this really old footage, and it was also interesting to see where there were gaps in my footage, like what things I didn't film while we were out and about, and how I had to add little bits here and there to make everything seem cohesive. Hopefully the next one I do won't take as long. It's already kind of old though, so we'll see how that one turns out with that film footage. So before I close out, I want to do a quick little recap. Our first stop that we stopped at in Half Price Books in Fremont, I picked up Rich People Problems. This was my choice. I got to choose this one, and it was a great choice because this was a 4.5 stars for me, and it finished out a series, so that was fantastic. The second stop was in Hayward, and that was at Books on B, wonderful bookstore, and that's where Nathaniel got to choose for me. Well, the random number generator got to choose for me, and that was Into a Towering Passion, Poems on Love. This is Everyman's poetry. Our third bookstore was in San Mateo because we did not have time when the traffic was pretty rough to go to San Francisco. So we ended up going to B Street Books, and we really like San Mateo, so I definitely want to go back and just spend time in that little downtown area. I've been to San Mateo before, but I don't think I've actually spent time in the little downtown area before. So that was a fun new experience. B Street Books was a very busy place, lots of people, lots of noise in the background. It was another instance where the random number generator chose for me, and I got The Threat, How the FBI Protects America in the Age of Terror and Trump by Andrew McCabe, and I really did enjoy this actually. It was 4 stars. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this was 4 stars as well. So 4.5, 4 stars, 4 stars. Pretty impressive for these randomly generated ones. And then the fourth stop was at Feldman's bookstore in Menlo Park. Really enjoyed it. I didn't mention this, but the bookstore owner was really charming and a nice guy as well. He told me how much he really liked Sweet Thursday by John Steinbeck when I brought it up to buy it. And I enjoyed it as well. What did I give this one? Do you remember? Was it a 4.5 stars? It was 4.25 stars. So not quite as high for me as Cannery Row, but another instance where I got to finish a series, which is very exciting. So 2 series finished in this video. And then at our final 5th stop, it was Recycled Bookstore West in Campbell. I really like this bookstore. It's got both used and new books. It's just a great little bookstore in a downtown area, and they got cats, so that's always fun too. So for this one, since Nathaniel, my beloved nephew, just kept doing the rough seas, Chelle said, you know, you should probably pick at least one book for you. I mean, I know I did for the first stop, but she was thinking, you know, pick another one for yourself. And so I figured, because I'm such a rule follower, you know, I gotta do things the way the rules go, I would still do one that was randomly generated, but then I would also pick one for my own choosing. The randomly generated one was actually a great choice. It was Reflection, A Twisted Tale by Elizabeth Lim. I was very excited that this one came up because I've been wanting to read some of the Twisted Tales and I hadn't had a chance to yet. I ended up giving this one 3.75 stars, and I feel like that's pretty accurate. I did really enjoy it though, so it's not like it's a low 3.75 stars. Whatever that means. And then finally, the book that I chose, thinking about Chelle, because she's the one who said I should pick my own book, but I also know how much she's loved this book, was A Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. 5 stars. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. This was a highlight of this whole reading vlog, and I just felt like overall this was incredibly successful. So I'm really happy with how things turned out. So here's my stack of success. I really had fun doing this, and I'm so excited to do another one. In fact, I've already done other ones. I just need to read the books. So let me know in the comment section down below, have you read any of these books? If you have, what'd you think about them? Did our ratings kind of align? If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, because I do plan on doing more vlogs like this. It's so fun. And when I was actually editing this vlog, I was like, gosh, I wish it hadn't taken me so long to get to this, because it's just a blast. These kind of vlogs are a lot of fun for me to do. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye.